She thought she had married the most powerful and respected man in the village, a prestigious marriage, a life of wealth, a secure future. But behind the luxurious walls of the Keita family lay a secret darker than the night, a secret buried literally. A disappearance never solved, a manipulative mother, an uncle with twisted intentions, and the spirit of a woman who refuses to rest in peace. Watch until the very end because the final revelation will shock you. One morning, a piece of news shook the entire village. According to rumors, Khadydyatou, the most greedy and arrogant woman of all, was about to marry off her daughter into the famous Keita family, the most renowned and prosperous family in the village. However, within that very family, a tragedy had occurred several years earlier. The heir of this wealthy lineage, named Seydou Keita, had lost his wife, Fatou Camara. According to the investigation, it was declared a voluntary disappearance. Those in charge of the case claimed that Fatou Camara had willingly run away, but everyone knew the family had used its influence to protect itself and silence the affair. Still, despite the villagers' suspicions, no one had any concrete proof to confirm it. On the contrary, fear and mistrust of the Keita family ran deep among the people. The village, called Somoko, was a beautiful African village located somewhere in West Africa, where tradition and prosperity coexisted in perfect harmony. Somoko was highly respected for its influence and its bustling, versatile market, where one could find absolutely everything. Khadydyatou, a modest widowed village woman somewhat well off, extremely arrogant, and very greedy, dreamed of rising to the same level as the village nobility. She owned several plots of land, a wealth she had inherited from her late husband. Khadydyatou had a very beautiful 21-year-old daughter, respectful and intelligent, though she carried a slight trace of arrogance, nothing compared to her mother's. Her name was Mariam Diallo, originally from Senegal. She possessed an almost supernatural beauty. Her dream was to make her father, now in the afterlife, proud and to become highly respected in the village. She wanted to be ranked among the most important figures of the community. However, she had just married Seydou Keita, the heir of the Keita family, aged 28. Seydou was a businessman who traveled frequently and was far more present outside the home than within it. He was extraordinarily wealthy, very generous, and respectful. Seydou was altruistic and unapologetically honest. When he saw the truth, he spoke it without hesitation. He was a pragmatic man. All of his father's wealth had been entrusted to him without exception. He lived with his uncle Karim Sanger and his mother T.N. Connat, both of whom were constantly present in the household. T.N. Connat, Seydou Keita's mother, in her early 50s, was deeply Machiavellian. She always wanted more than what she already possessed. Lazy and merciless, she seemed utterly heartless. A woman of secrets, she smiled far too often because behind that smile hid a viper. As for Karim Sanger, the younger brother of her late husband, as the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. Karim Sanger was a notorious womanizer. He took pleasure in pursuing other men's wives, finding greater thrill in what did not belong to him. He deeply envied his nephew Seydou Keita, who, despite everything, trusted him. Karim Sanger and T.N. Connat had inherited nothing. She had received nothing from her husband, and he had inherited nothing from his brother after the latter's tragic death. The reason was deeply sad and painful. T.N. Connat and Karim Sanger were far too close for a sister-in-law and a brother-in-law. They were hiding two major secrets, along with very different ambitions. Karim Sanger wanted to seize a portion of his nephew Seydou Keita's wealth, while T.N. Connat wanted to gain her son's trust for a very specific purpose. Seydou Keita was the spitting image of his father, a brilliant businessman, often unavailable. However, he was extremely loyal and trusted no one, especially not his mother and his uncle, because of the advice his father had given him on the day of his death. On the day of his eternal rest, realizing that his end was near, his father sent everyone out of the room so he could speak privately with his son. He said to him, "My son, you will inherit everything I own, without exception. Promise me not to let this wealth slip away and to live a happy life. Be present for your family, and do not let money guide you. I know you have questions about others, but do not worry, you will discover the truth one day. You are the only one in whom I have absolute trust, and I know you will understand my choice." Those were his father's final words. Seydou Keita did not want this marriage, but eventually accepted it after the advice of his mother, T.N. Connaught. He was still in love with his first wife who had disappeared, and he had sworn to find out where she was and bring her back without knowing that she was, in reality, very far away. Seydou had kept all the belongings of his missing wife. He was deeply in love with Fatou Camara. Together, they had vowed loyalty to each other, for better and for worse. The love was mutual. Seydou Keita was devastated the day he learned of the unexplained disappearance of Fatou Camara, his other half, his wife, and his best friend. From that day on, he was never the same. A part of him was lost and dormant, and that very part constantly pushed him to search for his wife. In reality, the reason behind this marriage was a secret agreement between T.N. Connaught and Khadydyatou, Mariam Diallo's mother. The two women had reached a deal. In exchange for the marriage of their children, Khadydyatou was to hand over several plots of land to T.N. Connaught in the village of Somoko. No one saw through the deception, not even Seydou Keita, except the uncle, Seydou's mother, and Mariam's mother. A few weeks later, Seydou Keita learned from an old woman in the village what everyone whispered in secret. That was when he came up with an idea to uncover the truth about what had driven his first wife to flee their home during his absence. According to him, his wife had vanished. Seydou Keita decided to stop traveling altogether and canceled all his business trips, even if it meant losing millions. What he wanted to uncover was worth more than gold. Seydou Keita led the investigation himself, while carefully observing those around him. He spent his days scrutinizing the behavior of his mother, T.N. Connaught, and his uncle, Karim Sanger. Their actions seemed to conceal dark secrets, yet he could not quite put his finger on them. As for his new wife, he discovered nothing suspicious. In fact, he appreciated her behavior. Mariam Diallo was attentive and caring. Despite her personal ambitions, she was not a bad person, only blinded by her desire to rise. 2 days later, when Mariam Diallo's mother came to visit them, T.N. Connaught demanded a private meeting with her. Seydou Keita, who already suspected his own mother, wondered what they were plotting. He then decided to listen in secretly, using a hidden microphone and cameras installed throughout the house. From his office, he listened to their conversation. Khadydyatou and T.N. Connaught were talking. T.N. Connaught said, "I'm waiting for you to honor your part of the deal. Your daughter married a Keita, but you still haven't given me your lands." Khadydyatou replied, "I will give them to you, with the land titles and plans, in a few months. Be patient, paperwork takes time." Then they returned to the living room and resumed a casual conversation. In reality, Khadydyatou was trying to deceive T.N. Connaught, while the latter wanted to secure this treasure before giving her approval for a secret project. Sitting in his office, Seydou Keita had just realized that his mother had made a deal with his wife's mother to arrange a marriage for her own benefit. He remained calm, showing no sign of his inner turmoil. 2 nights later, Seydou was awakened by noises coming from his office. They were moan sounds like those of people making love. At first, he thought he was hallucinating, then he clearly heard voices. "Karim, I love it, make me feel what he never did. Make him jealous wherever he is." Seydou got up and quietly went to Mariam Diallo's bedroom. She was sleeping deeply. His mother's bedroom, however, was empty. His heart pounding, he moved toward his uncle's room. What he saw froze him in place. His mother and his uncle were having sex. Their obscene words paralyzed him with hatred. He kept his composure, returned to his room, and cried. Why was it that he, the richest and most respected man in the village, was not entitled to happiness? He suffered in silence, but it was his choice. Shortly after, Mariam Diallo woke up and went to drink some water. In the hallway, she heard muffled sobs. Despite his usual coldness, she entered Seydou's room. He did not want to see her, but she insisted and held him in her arms to comfort him. Why was he crying? Seydou lied. He said he missed his first wife. Mariam felt a sharp pain in her heart. He was still obsessed with that missing woman. To comfort him, she offered to cook for him. It was the first time he accepted. In the kitchen, Mariam, who did not know how to cook, prayed to the ancestors to help her. As she prepared the meal, strange things began to happen. Whenever her back was turned, she felt an invisible presence adding ingredients. She attributed it to divine intervention. When she returned, everything was ready. She tasted the food. It was delicious. She thanked the ancestors. Seydou tasted it in turn and burst into tears. The dish tasted exactly like the one made by Fatou Camara, his first wife who had disappeared. He was overwhelmed. Mariam, astonished, wondered how she could have performed such a miracle. Suddenly, Seydou kissed her passionately. They made love for the first time in the sacred garden. It was their wedding night, but what followed would be incomprehensible. In reality, Mariam did not love Seydou and neither did he love her. Since their marriage, they had never consummated their union. Each of them was pursuing their own goals. Mariam believed Seydou loved another woman, but she did not know who she was. The next day, Seydou regretted his actions. Furious with himself, he decided to keep his discoveries to himself in order to protect his reputation. But he stopped smiling even at the 3 people living under his roof. Mariam became the main target of his anger. Only Fatou Camara's mother continued to receive his kindness and gifts. Mariam, on the other hand, endured his mood swings. Yet every time Seydou shouted at her, an object would suddenly fall on its own. He would then calm down, because that was exactly what Fatou Camara used to do whenever she sensed his anger. These strange occurrences became more frequent. A few days later, Mariam found herself constantly thinking about Seydou, despite his harshness. She realized that she was beginning to love him. She decided to fight for this growing love. Several months passed. Mariam discovered that she was pregnant. Happy, she hoped Seydou would be as well, but every time she tried to tell him, he cut her off. Exhausted, she kept silent. Seydou, meanwhile, was being consumed by the presence of his mother and his uncle. He poured his anger onto Mariam. One morning, he made a decision. His uncle had to leave the house. His mother protested violently. Seydou exploded. He accused them of being responsible for his father's death and for disturbing his eternal rest. Faced with their disbelief, he revealed the truth. "I know about your affair. My father discovered it, that's why he left you nothing. He said nothing because I was too young. Today I understand." Mariam, stunned, covered her mouth. Seydou added, "You too, Mariam, you will leave if you don't do what I say." She burst into tears, unwilling to leave him while carrying his child. History seemed to be repeating itself, yet no one realized it. A professional call interrupted the tension. A multi-million project required him to leave. Seydou issued an ultimatum. Upon his return, he wanted to see only his mother in the house. Mariam begged him not to go, having a bad feeling. As he prepared to leave, she entered determined. "I know I have to go, but listen to me. I'm pregnant." Seydou, surprised, was interrupted by another call. After hanging up, he looked at her intently, sensing her sincerity. The scene reminded him of his final moments with Fatou. He took her in his arms. "If I don't come back," he began. She silenced him, crying. He left. What would happen next would eerily mirror what had happened to his first wife. But this time, justice would intervene in a way no one expected. That same night, Mariam Diallo was awakened from sleep by a strange dream. Sitting on her bed, trying to recall it, the woman from her dreams suddenly appeared. It was the spirit of the missing woman. She said, "I don't want to hurt you, I only ask for your help. I am Seydou's first wife, and I was murdered by his uncle, Karim Sanger." Terrified, Mariam screamed in horror. Her husband's uncle entered the room to see what was happening. She tried to tell him, but he saw nothing. Karim took advantage of the situation to grope his nephew's wife, but Mariam, paralyzed with fear from what she had just witnessed, noticed nothing. Karim pretended to console her. After a few minutes, he let her leave the room. Once outside, standing at the door, his demeanor was that of a man ready to act on his obsession. The uncle had become obsessed with his nephew Seydou Keita's wife, while Seydou was away. That's how he returned to his room. He couldn't close his eyes, haunted by the memory of how he had touched her. Meanwhile, once Mariam had calmed herself, the spirit of Fatou Camara appeared again. Mariam wanted to scream but managed to control herself. Fatou Camara said, "The man who just comforted you will soon turn against you. If you wish, I can protect you. In return, you must help me seek justice. I will reveal secrets and evidence to you so that you can tell my husband, Seydou Keita." Mariam Diallo, with a determined expression, replied, "Oh, Madame Seydou Keita is my husband, and you are just a deceased stranger." Then she added, "As you wish, I will help you, but tell me exactly what happened." Fatou Camara said, "I died while I was pregnant with Seydou's child during one of his trips. This man and this woman were my tormentors. Karim Sanger raped me and threatened me to keep silent. Days passed, and I waited for my husband Seydou, but he was not there." Every night, Karim forced himself on me. One day, I went to tell my mother-in-law everything, but this woman was a monster. I didn't know she was secretly involved with him. When she found out through me that Karim Sanger, her son's uncle, was forcing me into this despite my pregnancy, she became enraged and went to confront Karim in his room. I thought she was defending me, so I went to listen at the door. That's when I learned that this woman was secretly involved with him. She said, "Karim, how dare you betray me with this girl? I am disappointed you will leave this house. We have been together since my husband was alive, and now you dare to betray me." When I heard this, I was terrified by the gravity of the secret. That's when I decided to flee the house to protect myself. That same night, late at night, Karim Sanger entered my room yet again, intending to force himself on me, his face full of anger. This time, I did not let him. I neutralized him by grabbing his testicles. Enraged, he struck me hard on the head. That was my eternal rest. That's how the two of them got rid of my body and erased all traces, making it appear as if I had fled. After hearing this, Mariam began to believe her, though she still doubted. She thought it might be her imagination. She decided to test it. A few days later, she noticed that when she showered, someone secretly watched her, and when she slept, someone entered her room. One night while she was asleep, Karim came into the room demanding to talk. It was already late. As he spoke, he began to behave indecently. Mariam resisted, and that's when he tried to grab her by force. Mariam Diallo then shouted, "Help me, Fatou Camara!" Her uncle froze. "Fatou Camara, what are you talking about?" Bang! A violent slap landed across his cheek. He jumped up and fled the room. The slap had come from the spirit of the deceased Fatou Camara. Mariam Diallo, now free, thanked Fatou Camara and promised to help bring the truth to light. But Seydou Keita was her man, and she would share him with no one, not even a revenant. And so, an alliance was formed. Mariam Diallo asked where they had hidden Fatou's body. She was shown a spot in the house. "Behind the house, they buried my body there and made sure no one knew." Fear and indignation filled her. From that moment, she began to take precautions to protect herself from the same fate. She no longer ate their food, pretended she wasn't hungry, and never stayed at the table with them, claiming she didn't feel well. An ambulance arrived. Meanwhile, Seydou Keita's mother, T.N. Khanat, tried to shift all responsibility onto Karim Sanger, claiming innocence. But that was when the police officer played the recordings of all their conversations. Terrified at the prospect of going to prison, T.N. Khanat grabbed a knife and plunged it into her own chest. Everyone was shocked, marveling at the despair and courage it took to commit suicide. Thus, Karim Sanger was sent to prison, and Mariam Diallo was taken away by the ambulance. In reality, Seydou Keita had lied about leaving on a business trip so he could monitor them closely, recreating the same conditions from the last time, when his first wife had disappeared. In conclusion, he discovered the truth, but it wasn't the end. A more serious problem was coming, and this time, he was the one responsible. At the hospital, Mariam Diallo did not wake for 2 weeks. She was pregnant. Seydou Keita was petrified when the doctors told him they would have to disconnect her in 2 days. On his way to Mariam's mother's house, he met a strange old woman who spoke urgently. "My son, I know what must be done. Go quickly and get rid of everything that still ties you to the deceased first wife to save the second wife." The old woman warned that there was no time to lose, then continued on her way. Quickly, Seydou returned home, searched the room, and took both his wedding ring and Fatou Camara's ring. He set them on fire, saying, "I loved you deeply during these 3 years, from your disappearance until now. I had promised myself not to love another if I did not find you. Now that I know you are gone, and that the guilty are in prison, I wish for us to be free from our past obligations, and for each of us to continue our own path." And so, he burned the rings. A few minutes later, a call from the hospital informed him that his wife, Mariam Diallo, had awakened safe and sound along with their baby. Seydou Keita became the happiest man alive and rushed to the hospital to see them. In reality, the reason Mariam had not awakened earlier was that Fatou Camara had tried to keep her as the only woman in Seydou Keita's life. Even in death, she still wanted to protect her husband and keep him for herself. But the destruction of the wedding rings proved that Seydou Keita had finally moved on. It was then that Fatou Camara released Mariam Diallo. Several months later, Mariam Diallo gave birth to a daughter. Seydou Keita named the child Fatou. Mariam Diallo decided to abandon her previous dream of leaving and focused instead on her love and family. As for Seydou Keita's mother, she had passed away, but part of her wealth went to her daughter-in-law. As for the uncle in prison, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Seydou Keita's reputation remained intact despite the recent tragedies and scandals, for he was a good man, and only those around him had acted wickedly. In life, building a reputation based on good faith will protect you from shame. To anyone who has lost a loved one, a spouse, fiancé, or soulmate, avoid holding on to things that tie you directly to the past, as they may harm your future. The end. And that is how this story concludes. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, leave comments, and like.